Hi, I'm David from the Outdoor Education Centers, and today on this video we've got something a little bit different planned for you. Often in the past you've heard us refer to nature journaling. We try to include challenges and activities for you to do at home or in school with every bit of exploration of the natural world that we do. Today we want to focus on what nature journaling is and share with you some of the ways that each of us incorporates nature journaling into our teaching. I'd like to go back to the springtime and these very woods where I am, right in the heart of the city, and it's a place where I follow the changes in the natural world over the course of the year. But I particularly like it in the spring, and I want to go back to the time when the trout lilies are coming out. This is a small yellow flower that's one of the earliest spring wildflowers. And I'm choosing that because I made a video not so long ago about how I use nature journaling to capture my observations in the natural world. So we'll start with that, and then you'll see each of us introduce one aspect of nature journaling that we use when trying to better understand the environment for ourselves and when connecting with students. So whether you're a teacher or you're doing this on your own at home, these are some ideas for you to try. I might suggest that you look at one segment at a time and then try it out, see how it works for you, and if it's something that you want to build into your nature journaling practice. Once the rest of the team has introduced their ideas for nature journaling, I'm going to spend a little bit of time sharing some of the resources that we use, and that would be a great start for anyone who's just getting into nature journaling. So stay with us, have fun, see you at the end. Nature journaling is not about creating a book full of pretty pictures. I use nature journaling as a tool, and it's some way for me to put my observations down on paper, and it includes writing, includes drawing, and it forces me to look very closely at what it is that I'm focusing on for that day. It's also a way for me to put down questions that I'm wondering about these things that I'm discovering in the environment. Nature journaling doesn't require a lot of equipment. You can see I've got everything I need in a plastic bag there. Got my journal, or any kind of paper will work all right. Something to write with. I'm using a pencil in this case here. And I'd like to take measurements, so a ruler of some kind. And then if I really want to get in close and see things that I can't with my own eyes, the magnifying lens really helps do that. You'll notice that I'm kind of picking through the leaf litter there, looking closely at all parts of the plant, and then trying to accurately describe or sketch whatever I'm finding with that flower. It was clear in my exploration of this nature area that trout lily didn't grow everywhere. Magnifying lens is always with me, but I will carry other things too. When I finish with it in the field, I do take it home. I might add a little bit of color to it based on my photographs. I'll do some research and really bulk up the information in my journal about it, because then next year at this time, when I come back to my journal, I can look at the dates and the times, and I know the place to expect to find trout lily. Well, that's a very quick introduction to one of the ways that I would use nature journaling, and some ideas for you to incorporate into your own practice.
When I've been out making observations with my nature journal this fall, I've been noticing that these pine cones are everywhere under the tree that I've been sitting. This giant white pine has many of these cones at the base of it. Today I'm going to share one of my favorite journal activities with you, and it's called Zoom In, Zoom Out. I'm going to take a few minutes to record this pine cone in my journal and make a record of all the things that I notice about it. And then I'm going to take the opportunity to zoom in very closely and look at one part of it, and then zoom out and look at the tree that it comes from. Let's zoom in first. So let's head inside and see if we can take a close-up look at what one of these single scales look like. And then we'll come back outside and zoom out. Now that I've spent some time drawing the pine cone in my journal, I want to zoom in and take a single scale and focus on it and take some time to look up close at the details of one of them. So now that we've had a chance to go inside and take a close-up look or a zoom-in look at one of the scales of this pine cone and where all the seeds of this tree are stored, I'd like to take a zoom out and take a look at what the tree looks like from further away. Well, I've walked pretty far away, and you notice the tree behind me? We can't even fit it in the screen. In order to fit it in the screen, we have to pan up so that you can see what it might look like. Let's split the screen so you can get a view of the whole tree. You can see that this white pine is very large. So from zooming in all the way to zooming out, we can get so many different perspectives of one item. Now, I have some things that I'm wondering from my zoom in, zoom out, so I'm going to record them in my journal as well.
One way that we can work in journaling is to draw a map. Now, I fast forwarded this footage a little bit because I'm not a very fast drawer, so it took me a little bit of time to really get in the detail that I wanted of what I am affectionately calling the orchard. And what I make sure to do when I am drawing a map of an area is to try to really pay attention to the detail, the types of trees, for instance, in this area. Being an orchard, it's lined by coniferous trees, hence the green evergreens that I'm kind of drawing in there. And then it has a rocky garden on one side. And just trying to pay attention to detail. How many rocks are in that garden or make up that garden? And so you want to try to put in as much detail as you can of the area. Now, I'm not a super detail-oriented drawer, but I tried to make sure that the colors of things that I was using was as accurate as possible, and that I was getting in the detail that I wanted. You might want to sketch in gardens or water or ponds if you have them in that area. Now, one thing that I make sure to focus on is that I'm actually only using what I might call permanent structures. So because this area may have had a compost bin or things that could be moved, I try not to include those because they are things that could be moved over time. I'm trying to only include the natural features. So at this point, I'm starting to actually sketch the apple and fruit trees in the orchard and adding little details that they're on mounded hills. And getting a little bit distracted in my filling in the garden spaces, but also just making sure that I have the right amount of trees, and also that the spacing is somewhat accurate, so that if I were to look at this, or if I were to use this map to send off to somebody, they might be able to find, which tree was the cherry tree or which tree is the pear tree. I didn't actually label each tree individually, but I do kind of put in as much detail as possible. Now, with any map, you want to make sure it has a title, and I actually added the date to this one so that I could remember if I go back and draw it again, maybe in another season, what it looks like in autumn versus what it might look like in summer. Now, also, all maps should have a legend or a key. So in this one, I definitely wanted to focus in on making sure I had all those key symbols. So the trees, which type of tree, which type of picture represents which type of tree, what the log looking symbols represented, what the rocks for the garden there that are bordering the garden. So all in all, you just want to make sure that you have as much detail as possible, including the main characteristics of the area that you want to be revisiting time and time, or that you're just journaling for one time. Thanks for mapping with me, friends.
A wonderful way to get inspiration to add to your nature journal is to have a sit spot. So a sit spot is a place that you pick that's special to you, and you can visit it time and time again. You may be able to visit your sit spot once a day, or you may just go back each season. I like to bring my nature journal with me, and I pick a spot where I can get comfortable. I usually like to lean against a tree, and I let myself settle in and take one deep breath. I'm going to spend about 5 or 10 minutes in my sit spot just looking and listening. So I'm not going to be talking, and I'm not going to be making any noises myself. If I need to move around a little bit in the beginning, that's okay, but you really want to settle into your sit spot just so that your senses can do the work to observe everything that's happening around you. Now, some ways that you can get inspiration to add to your nature journal: you may choose to map out your sit spot area like Christine had shown us. Or maybe you will find a special treasure nearby and you'll want to sketch it into your journal. One way that I like to add to my nature journal using my sit spot is by doing a sound map. Let's have a look as I create a sound map of my sit spot space. The first thing you'll want to do once you've settled into your sit spot is to take one whole page of your journal and put yourself in the center of that page. So remember, you don't have to be this perfect artist. You can do rough sketches, you can use words, pictures, and numbers. I'm just gonna make a little stick person here to show where I am in the center of the map. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take some time to close my eyes and to just listen all around me. What I'm going to record on my map are the sounds that I'm hearing in relation to where I am. So if I close my eyes right now and I hear some bird sounds in front of me to the right, I'm going to, on the right hand of my page, at the top, close to the edge, because it was quite far away, I'm going to record that I heard bird sounds. So you may choose to draw a little picture of a bird, or you could just write tweet tweet, like I did here, or you could even just write the words bird sounds. Okay, then you want to close your eyes again, and again, it takes time to take in all the different sounds. So I'm hearing the leaves in the trees above me. If you're nearby water, you might hear water moving or ice crackling. You probably will even hear some sounds of traffic or maybe even honks of horns, depending on where you're doing your sit spot. So after about 5 or 10 minutes, you've taken the time to record down all of your sounds that you heard around you. Take some time, if you wish, to add more details. You may choose to have a legend to show what some of the symbols you used represented on your page. And you may also want to go back and add some color to your page as well. The idea of the sound map is that it really helps us tune in to the natural and human sounds that are around us that we don't usually get to hear. So when we're busy moving about, or even in our sit spot when our eyes are open, we don't necessarily hear everything that we can when we close our eyes and listen quietly.
Hello, my name is Brandon. I'm brand new here at the Bill Mason Center, and today I really want to talk to you about some nature journaling techniques that I love to get into. And one of my favorites is the compare and contrast. And this is because, often out in nature we'll find different things and we'll think to ourselves, these look exactly identical to one another, or maybe, they're very similar, and how on earth can we tell the difference between them? And so with the compare and contrast method, we often like to take two things and we take them and draw them right next to each other. And we try to identify all the things that are similar to one another, as well as the things that are different. And this is because even if the two things look exactly the same, there's going to be small little differences. And by really taking that time to sit down and draw them, using words and numbers and things like that, we're able to really figure out, what makes each item unique. Right now, everything around us is actually kind of nice, but sometimes when we're doing our nature journaling, it might rain, it might be really, really cold, and sometimes it's nice to be able to collect some things like fossils or leaves and bring them indoors so that we can journal and take all the time that we want drawing them out and figuring out all the differences between them. I recently came back from Saskatchewan where I was out doing some research, and I found a really cool fossil that reminded me of some fossils that I found here back in Ontario. So if you'd like to join me, we're going to go inside and I'll show you those two fossils that I found. We're now inside, and I have with me my two different fossils. And you might be wondering, what is a fossil? And effectively what a fossil is a record that's been left behind from either plants or animals that used to live in this area long ago. And so typically we can think of fossils in kind of two different ways. Over here we have the imprint of an orthocone, which we can find here in the Ottawa Valley. It's more like if you put your hand into mud and that mud solidified, that's what you'd get with these imprints. This one here, this is a baculite or baculites, and this is the really neat fossil that I found while I was out in Saskatchewan, whereas we like to call them more like a cast. And so you can think, if you break your arm and you get a cast, you can imagine that, but then filled with rock, and that kind of gives us a more three-dimensional look as to what that animal or plant could have looked like. When we're doing a compare and contrast, we want two things that look very similar to one another. And these two fossils, they look very, very different. And the reason that I am comparing them is because when they were still alive, they looked almost identical to one another, even though they are from completely different areas as well as different time spans. And they all looked kind of like this. And so you can kind of see they look kind of like a big squid with a big shell kind of coming to a point. And today we actually still have animals that look very similar to them, known as the nautilus. And so these can still be found swimming in our oceans. And some of them are even still related to these fossils here. And so I have already gone ahead and drawn up my journal. And so we'll bring it up here and we'll kind of go over the things that I've noticed that are similar as well as the things that are different. We can start to notice that there are a few things that do kind of jump out at us as being very similar. First off, they're both fossils of the shells of these animals. And we can kind of see the different divisions that kind of make up the shell. As the animal grew, it would kind of add on new chambers. And you can kind of notice, especially in the outline of the orthocone, there's these really nice kind of lines that show exactly where each chamber was. Whereas if you look at the baculite, it's a little bit more confusing to know exactly where it is. But on my diagram, you can see though that I've outlined where the septa is on both the baculite as well as the orthocone. And the septa is that part that really divided between the two different chambers. And so we can see that they do look a little bit different though. With the orthocone, they're very flat, very straight. And even in my drawing, you can see with the baculite that it's kind of wavy looking. It has different shapes and it's a bit more 3D. And a lot of that has to do with the fact on how those parts came together. And so I did do a bit of a blow up because I found it was really, really cool. If you look at the baculite, that there's these suture lines, we like to call them, and they're very intricate. And because of that, the septa kind of have weird different shapes to them. And that's one of the really big defining features that kind of separates these baculites from the orthocones. And you know, as I look at them, I start to wonder, you know, why there's that difference between them. You know, maybe there's something about how fast they were growing, or maybe it's the kind of predators that they have. But you know, we don't really know because we're not able to actually go out and study these animals because they're no longer here with us. And so we're left with lots and lots of different types of questions. And one of the fun things, you know, I said that we don't really know what these animals actually look like or how they behaved or anything like that. So it's often really fun when we're working with fossils to kind of draw what we think they might look like. And so I've kind of drawn two different ideas I had in my head as far as, you know, what these animals could have looked like. My first one over here kind of has a longer tentacles coming out of its face, you know, kind of more like a modern day squid. Whereas my second one has kind of a shorter face to it, more like the nautiluses that we have now. And so, you know, we can make these educated guesses based on things that are alive today, but, you know, we really have no idea what they look like, and they could be completely crazy looking as far as we know, which makes it really fun for us to use our imaginations to kind of draw out whatever we think they could have looked like. And so now that we've kind of gone over my two different fossils, I kind of challenge you to kind of go out and maybe try to find a few things, maybe around where you live, maybe there's a forest, you know, maybe grab two different leaves and bring them in and take that time just to kind of draw them out and really look to see what makes them different, what makes them similar, and kind of get an idea of the uniqueness of the world around us.
There you have it, 5 different approaches to using nature journaling for your own practice, whether you're doing it on your own at home or doing it with your entire class at school. One of the resources that I think is essential if you're getting into nature journaling is How to Teach Nature Journaling, this book right here. And I want to thank John Muir-Laws and Emily Ligren for putting this together. A lot of effort went into it. Definitely shows. They have a corresponding website that goes along with it, and all of these resources can be accessible to you at no cost. This is a great place to start. Many of our ideas come directly from them or are versions of something that they've introduced us to. In addition to online and published resources, you can probably find other people who are doing this throughout the Ottawa Valley. If you want to go out with someone and practice it together, that can always be motivating. Remember to apply the current guidelines for safety and health, but get out there and encourage and work together. Now, if you're doing this in your class, you've got people surrounding you right now whose ideas can be shared with you. And it's always helpful to have some feedback and some fresh ideas. We hope to keep providing those for you in the future. Thanks for joining us. Take care and have fun journaling. Till next time, we'll see you then.